Hi, thank you for tuning in to this video. This is video 6 of this series. We're doing a series of the Eightfold Path. So that means that there's 5 videos before this one if you want to kind of review and look at the other ones. We're going into a different area. What I mean by that is the Eightfold Path is built from 3 different areas, really. The first one is what we refer to as the wisdom aspects, the wisdom teachings. There's 2 of them. I have this nifty little chart here. The W stands for wisdom and skillful understanding and skillful thinking. Then we went into this M stands for morality, or it could be ethics, skillful speech, skillful action, skillful livelihood. We talked about the different ways to refrain from lying and divisive speech, and positive actions, refraining from actions that harm other people and harm ourselves. And then livelihood, finding the right career, the right job, and how we feel about our work. And now we're looking at skillful effort. The C stands for concentration. And we're getting into this exciting area because of us Western people really do like the practices. And when we think of Buddhism, we think of meditation, we think of concentration and mindfulness. And particularly, we're kind of doing a recap about effort and why we concentrate, why we have meditation and mindfulness practices. It's a very exciting area. It's so exciting, in fact, that the next book that I'm writing has a lot to do with, well, it's primarily about skillful effort, particularly in the area of identifying and understanding the hindrances to our concentration, the hindrances to our happiness. And then next week we'll be looking at mindfulness, and then the following week, the final week, we'll be looking at skillful concentration. So you can take a snapshot of this. It's a lovely piece. And we're going to be doing some gardening here, and whether you're a gardener or not, I use this analogy of gardening to more easily explain these concepts of the hindrances and the fetters and how all of this works for us. I'm afraid that we won't be able to get into a lot of detail about it because I'm trying to keep all of these videos down to like 15 minutes, otherwise it's proven that I just lose people on YouTube if they're too long. Lack of concentration or something, I don't know. But we try to keep them short and sweet. And so let's get right down to business here. In a garden, we visualize a garden and we want to clear the area, the garden plot where we're going to put our garden, even before it's laid out. We remove the rocks and we kind of maybe stake it, and get an understanding of where it is. But most of all, we remove the weeds. And these weeds could be looked at as negative mind states, negative states of mind. The negative weeds in a garden, we can, get them all out of there and rake them up, and the garden is completely clean, or the plot. It's not a garden yet, it's just a plot. And then we could come back in a couple of days later and all of a sudden there's weeds there again. And so once the garden is clean and we see a few weeds coming up, they're easy to identify. And that's the analogy of how the mind is when we meditate. We're kind of clearing the slate, like we're starting from a clean slate. And when the negativity comes up during our meditation practice, we can see these things, and then we can more easily eliminate them just by clearly identifying them. And these weeds are the representation of the negative states. The plot is our meditation mind, but it's also our life as well. So we clear out this area. From now and again, we have these weeds that come up, and we should know from our experience of gardening that when we clear it out, that's not the end of the job. Our job is not over. we have to get in there and maintain it. We have to remove these weeds. We want to prevent them from coming in, and we want to maintain them when it is clear. So these weeds are what we're calling hindrances. They can be the hindrances to our happiness. They can be the hindrances to our ability to concentrate in our meditation practice. So for that reason, they're very easy to spot. There's 5 hindrances that are mentioned by the Buddha, and we would really do ourselves a fantastic favor by memorizing these 5 simple hindrances, because any difficulty that we have in life, any problem that doesn't make us feel complete in life, anything that comes up that irritates us, anything that comes up that also distracts us in any way, distracts us from having a nice concentrated meditation, it's because it is one of these 5 hindrances or a mixture of them. The very first one, I'll just kind of go down the list, the first one is desire. This comes up a lot in Buddhism, but the desire for things to be different, the desire to want something more, the desire to have material things, the desire for worldly things or non-worldly things to be different for us as well. To be more godlike or to live in a heavenly realm, something like that. But we know what desires are. And this is a category of things that can really distract us in many ways. If we want, in a nutshell, it's the desire to want things different than what they currently are. And we can desire something to come into our life thinking that it's going to permanently change things. And it isn't. It might temporarily change things for a moment or two, but that's about the best we can hope for. Sorry to mention that, but it's true, and we prove that to ourselves again and again. So the first one is desire. The next one is aversion, or what we could call ill will. So if desire is like this, aversion is like that. These are the things that we do not want in our life. A good example might be anger or fear, hatred, different degrees of hatred. Even certain kinds of emotions or moods, states that we have in the mind, if those are things that we don't want, and we are obsessed with not wanting them, they can interfere with our happiness. They can interfere with our meditation practice as well. Let's go back to anger. This is a good one because anger resides from something that happened in the past. So something happens in the past, it angers us. It could anger us now, it could seem like it's happening now, but actually it happened in the past. You can test this on yourself again and again and again, and you'll find it to be true. Even if we're cut off in traffic, we get angry and we hang on to that anger, and we can carry it with us for basically as long as we want. We can get angry for the rest of our lives at something that happened in the past, but it's actually a choice whether we want to hang on to that anger or not, because it happened in the past. It's over with, it's done, and any kind of anger management classes would tell you that we're just creating the anger ourselves for whatever reason. We're embracing it. And sometimes when we let go of that, we lose our identity. We identify with the anger as being one of our primary states, something that we identify with. So we have desire, we have anger. Another one is restlessness and worry. This is the habitual patterns of the mind, these things that come around again and again. Worry about this, worry about this, worry about this. And we can spot worry quite easily sometimes when we are, like when we first wake up in the morning. If there's something on our mind and we go, okay, it's a new day. What's ahead? What's happening here? And all of a sudden this thing comes up that's been bothering us all day yesterday. That's a worry. And it's a very habitual pattern that comes around and comes around and comes around. Worry is something that we all have experienced. It's something that we can take care of by doing exercises such as thought replacement. We notice that we're worrying. We pick something that can replace the thought, and then we use it. Something like, there's different things we can do, but just thinking in terms of something beneficial and loving as opposed to something that's negative that comes up that way. A very simple way to kind of replace a worry is just to simply bring ourselves into this presence. In this present moment, this still presence, there's no worry, there's no anger, there's no negativity at all, really, because we're creating all that ourselves. And one easy way to do that is to come back to the breath. If we find ourselves in a negative mood, doing negative thought patterns, just bring your attention back to the breath. Where do you feel the breath the most? Our eyes can be open or closed. It doesn't matter what we're doing. Just come back to that breath. And that is a tool that we can use to come back into this presence, this present moment. It's a very effective. And in the very end, or not the very end, but the last areas of both of my books, there's a part and a section on what is called continual breath awareness. And that is a practice of just bringing your consciousness and your awareness to the breath and bringing yourself into this presence. And there's many other tools that we can use to combat these hindrances, and I'm just going to throw out a few. And if you have any questions, you can email me. But desire, aversion, restlessness, and worry. And another big one is sloth and torpor, which is mental and physical fatigue. If we are meditating and there's this fantasy that comes up to the mind, that's an indication that we're fatigued. If we get irritable, or that we, for some reason, just kind of fly off the handle, there's just other symptoms like being unable to concentrate, wanting to concentrate, but it's just not there. These are signs of fatigue, which is what we call sloth and torpor. It could be mental, and it could be physical too. We could feel this fatigue in the body. Also, it could be boredom as well. So look for boredom. Then the fifth hindrance is doubt. Doubt can be very, very strong. If it's strong enough, we won't even get as far as watching this video, for example. We won't meditate. We won't do anything if we doubt that it's going to be beneficial for us, or if we doubt that it's going to be good for ourselves and for others in any way, that it's going to work. If something isn't going to work, we won't do it. So doubt is a big one. So these 5 hindrances are the weeds that we're talking about. And we can clean our garden off by just breaking off these weeds and hiding them and making our garden look pretty good. But in just a little bit of time, those weeds are going to come back because there's roots. There's deep roots underneath them. So we can, again, cut off the tops of the weeds, and our garden plot or the garden itself will look wonderful. You know, we have these beneficial plants, and we get rid of these bad ones, unsightly weeds, by just hiding them sort of, but the roots are there. So we have to actually, as a good gardener knows, have to get down and really get to the roots of the weeds, which is actually literally the root of the problem. And the roots to our problems are what is called fetters. They're called fetters is because these are actually the things that fetter or chain us to this continual rebirth into this samsaric world. Samsaric world, samsara, is a world that we have the understanding that we are born, we get sick, we age, and we die. And it happens again and again and again and again. We're born, we age, we age, we get sick, and we die. We're born, we get age, we're sick, and we die. And it happens again. The Buddha pointed this out, that this rebirth that we have is very, very continual and very perpetual. We can go through one complete life to get one little lesson. one little lesson. And it happens again and again and again and again. Now, if you don't believe in Buddhism, you don't believe in rebirth, and you don't believe in karma, these kinds of things, that's fine, because this will still steer you in a wonderful, wonderful direction. I'm not trying to, and I never would try to convert anybody to Buddhism. I have lots of friends that call themselves Buddhists, and I have friends that do not call themselves Buddhists or anything for that matter, and they're all wonderful, lovely, adoring people. But with the understanding of the fetters, it helps to understand why they're there. Now, these fetters are the roots. The very first one is the identity view, the view of the self, or what is called anatta, the non-self. In other words, if we see and use the self like the ego, for example, like I must accomplish this, I must be this, I must do this to be happy, I must blah blah blah, that can cause a great deal of suffering for us. And with the feeling of an I that is substantial and impermanent, never changing, we are almost putting that label that I am this God that is substantial, that never changes, which goes against our realization that everything is impermanent, everything is constantly changing. Is there anything that isn't, including this? So this always changes, and actually it changes constantly so much that even the terms that we use, birth and death, are really just labels. They're things that we put on, labels that we put on things to say that there's a beginning and there's an end. But even with this body, there is no real actual birth and death when we get right down to it. We can't say that, we can't name that time where the body was actually born. People try to say, well, it's when the sperm and the egg came together, but even before that, there was the sperm and the egg, so there was life before the sperm and egg came together. And we certainly weren't born when we came out of the womb, because there was something before that, and it goes on and on. And when we die, we could use the same reasoning, that when we die, we see this body lying in the morgue or wherever it is, and it's still there. It's not dead, but it's changing form. Basically, what happens is the body turns into fertilizer, and all these chemicals that are the same as fertilizer, and it goes on and on. But there is really no death involved, and there's no birth involved. There's just a life. There's living and there's changing, and we are all in the same boat. It happens to everyone and everything. It's quite beautiful, actually. And when we get to this point and understand this, it's a real liberation. So the first area of these fetters is identity, what is called identity view, or the realization that the self is just an illusion. And then the second fetter is doubt. Again, this is found in the hindrances, but this is the roots of the doubt. Doubt in the teachings, doubt in the teachings of the Four Noble Truth and karma and these types of things. And then also attachment to rites and rituals. Believing that just having this ritual that we do on a daily basis will liberate us and provide lasting freedom and happiness from this perpetual rebirth, where it's going to take a little bit more than just a ritual like lighting 3 sticks of incense each morning. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take more than just chanting something that we don't really pay much attention to while we're chanting it. It's going to take a little bit more than just a prayer, but we have to live it. We have to do our homework, so to speak. And so when we understand and eliminate these first 3 fetters, this is what the Buddha called a stream enterer. A stream enterer, if a person remained a stream enterer until the end of this life cycle now, they would be come back, be reborn 7 more times. There's 10 fetters. So if we also eliminated the 4th and the 5th fetters, the 4th one is called it's sensual desire, realizing that is the realization that everything that we come into contact with into the world has a response. We see something, and it might be pleasant or unpleasant. There's a response to what we're seeing, what we're touching, what we're hearing, smelling, feeling, and even thinking. Our senses go out into the world like tentacles on an octopus, and every time they touch something, whether it's through sound or sight or whatever it is, there's a corresponding feeling. And if we take that a little bit too far into the area where we might call it lust, and that's one of the words that comes up is lust, and allow ourselves to be drawn into these senses, and we become worldly beings instead of non-worldly beings. And remember, this is all very subtle. These are the roots. We know what senses are, but when we're working with the hindrances and eliminating the senses, we are in so much control of the senses. It's as if we are on the very last moment of our lifespan. And let's say we're on our deathbed and somebody says, look at the beautiful flowers. Somebody brings some flowers. And we're ready to die. We look at them and we go, they're flowers. We're not that excited about it. But we're not, we don't cast them out either. We don't feel like they don't have to be there. We accept them as flowers. They are a sense object. We might be able to smell them, see them, touch them, even hear them, and by crinkling the leaves or something like that. But we aren't drawn to them where they distract us and pull us in one direction or another. That duality is no longer there. And then ill will is, again, another hindrance. That is any kind of anger or hatred or just wishing another harm in any way, including ourselves. It's very, very subtle. And when these first 5 hindrances, these are considered the lower hindrances, when these are eliminated, when they are almost gone, maybe there's just a residual effect of them being there, we would be considered a once returner. We would have one more rebirth. We'd come back one more time, and at that point, it's like as if we just have one little lesson to learn, and then we're done. Or if they're completely eliminated, we would be a non-returner. We would not return into this abode, in this realm. We would be reborn in a completely different realm. And I can't really explain what that is because I've never been there, but some people they label it as a heavenly realm. It's a realm where we could have a very easy and meaningful existence. The following 5 hindrances, when they are eliminated, we would become an arhat. We would become enlightened in this lifetime. And then at the end of this lifetime, just like the Buddha, when we die, I'm just using that label die, when there's a death, then we would become fully enlightened, just like a Buddha. And these 5 hindrances are material rebirth, and then the next one is immaterial rebirth. In other words, being drawn and being excited about being reborn in a different realm or being reborn in this realm, or missing the realm, missing the existence here. And the reason being is that if we die with the idea that, oh, I'm really going to miss this world, that is enough for a rebirth. That is enough for us to come back. It's so subtle. And remember, we're thinking in terms of karma. If we wish that we could be reborn as in a heavenly realm, right before we die, and if we're an arhat, we would be reborn in another realm, just because of the subtleness of this karmic consequence for that wish. And then the eighth is conceit. And this is very subtle conceit. It's like the kind of conceit where we are eating some soup and we realize that there's a hair in our soup. And we go, oh, that hair is disgusting, you know. But when we realize that it's our hair, it's like, oh, that's just my hair. And we go back to eating the soup. It's not a pure, clear example, but it's kind of an example that I like to use because the subtle difference between this is a hair of somebody else or this is my hair. There's a little bit of conceit in that, right? And then the ninth hindrance is restlessness, which again is a hindrance. This fetter of restlessness is just not being complete with the way things are. Maybe we're not complete with the way we're dying, that the way this world is ending. Maybe we are alone and we want people around. So we're not completely happy with that situation. Or maybe there's a lot of people around, we want to be alone. And the same thing. We just have to be content with everything just the way it is, as if there's a major organized plan behind all of it. And then the 10th hindrance is ignorance. And that's ignorance of the teachings and not exactly getting it, not opening our ears enough to listen and understand. This ignorance is, again, so subtle, but it's like a non-understanding of any of these fetters. And if you want to this might sound strange. I think it's strange every time I mention it, but if you want to do a review of this and get a little bit more hands-on material, on the internet, go to Wikipedia and look up fetters. And there they will have this chart. And this is the chart I was just looking at, just to kind of get this out a little bit smoother so I can move on. But this is the chart that I'm looking at. You'll find this on Wikipedia if you get online and do a search for fetters. And it's done quite well, so I encourage you to do that. All of this is a part of skillful effort in this area of concentration. These are our practices. This is why we practice. We want to eliminate these hindrances. When we eliminate them, we are not eliminating forever because they're going to come back. But when we recognize them, we can weed the garden very, very easy. So we owe ourselves a favor to memorize the hindrances. That's the very first thing. And so when you're meditating, look for the hindrances. You don't necessarily have to label them or anything like that, but you want to recognize them and spot them and be aware of them. When the hindrances come up, it could be fear or anger or uneasiness, any kind of thing that we're not content with. It doesn't necessarily have to be one hindrance. It could be a combination of 2 or 3, or even all 5 of them could come up at the same time. So you want to get really, really good at recognizing these. If you can do this, it will completely change your life. You will be much, much happier. You will be more successful in life because your concentration will be better. You will be happier because of the inspiration that you will find in life. You'll be inspired to take on more things. You will learn how to use the contemplation that we did last week, to use contemplation without having these hindrances bombard you. You can use that contemplation for anything and become very, very successful, in this world if you wanted to, from the accumulation of whatever you want for yourselves, and particularly whatever you want for other people. Knowing the hindrances is very, very valuable. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. And again, the book that I'm writing right now is all about that. And the deeper area of the hindrances, when you want to really get the roots out, when we're talking about awakening or enlightenment, that is the fetters. The fetters is what we just got done talking about. We have to uproot these. So to wrap things up, we had a little trouble with the camera that we were just using, and now I'm recording on through my computer. But just to wrap things up, we were almost done, and then the battery died. I wanted to mention that the fetters are the roots of these negative mind states that we have, and once they're uprooted, they're stopped permanently. The hindrances, on the other hand, well, we have to continue to work with them. They're not a problem as long as we understand them and know them, and it actually is really a wonderful way to live our life, to know these hindrances are there, and to work with them. Just if we do it joyfully, it's not a problem. It really isn't. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please contact me through the Meditation Learning Center, Shane at Meditation Learning Center. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, continue to practice your meditation consistently. The idea is to practice your meditation in silence as any kind of negativity arises in the mind. See it as a hindrance, and once you're aware that it's a hindrance, virtually that's all it takes. That this is what is causing your problems. We're getting the upper hand on it. We're figuring it out to such an extent that it doesn't come to a surprise for us. It's there. So we plotted the garden. We remove the weeds, and when a weed comes up, we see it, and we can deal with it properly at that time. And there's various ways of doing it. And if you have any troubles finding a specific way of dealing with the negativity, please feel free to contact me. Because there are various ways to do it, but generally just seeing it and not identifying it with it is the answer. It does work. So thank you. I hope this is helpful.